Good morning, evening, or afternoon, whichever one's going on for you at this current point in time. And today, today for you, I was recently called out because there was an inspection that did not pass for an apartment, and the reason for that was there was a broken piece of wall. I'm gonna just put something on the screen so you know roughly what it looks like. I wasn't able to get a shot of it, but essentially, a little bit of drywall was broken away around the switch, and that's dangerous because when you have an inch and a half or two, um, if there's bad grounding or a grounding fault, a kid could potentially reach something metal in there and get it, or somebody who is blind would be reaching for a light switch or trying to feel along the wall and they could get electrocuted as well. That's a big no no. And so I had to get rid of that. Obviously, what you're about to see is the finished result because I wasn't able to. There's people in the room, there's people talking, people watching TV, company coming over. This is a video that's going on YouTube, but it's not a YouTube video, right? This is not an empty house in the middle of, Kansas after a tornado or something. This is something where actual people are living. So you have to respect people's homes. And, sometimes I'm not able to capture everything. That being said, what you're seeing is me after I cut about 2.25 inch by 4.25 inch little patch. If you want to see me do the actual work, I recently did a video on how I patch drywall. So you could always just look at that. I'll leave that in the description. But it was a 4.25 by 2.25. Put the patch in. Obviously, the walls are plaster; they're not drywall. So putting a screw through them is a no go. It just crumbles. I'm not a fan of plaster walls. That being said, everything went in, joint compound over, sanded everything down after 24 hours. Somebody did end up touching my wall, and so they made 3 fractures. I had to come back and skim over 2 layers. Luckily, I was still there doing other work, so not a big deal. But try to stay away from people's stuff. Until it's dry. With that being said, I painted up until a certain point, and when you say like, "Well, why didn't you paint that whole wall?" or what's the issue? The issue is other people touched work. They left the joint tape showing. They left some of the compound unsanded. It just doesn't look good. Some of the joint compound is like hardened, but they didn't like flatten it down. I'm not going to put my paint over that because then it looks like I take responsibility for that type of work. Absolutely not. One of the people who was company to the apartment said, "Did you do that?" I said, "No, that was not me. You see whatever look is a different color? That was me. Anything else? Absolutely not." So, with that being said, that got taken care of. I know it's going to pass inspection. I put a new plate. I know that switch was changed by me, so it's not going to be an issue. And yes, in case anybody cares, the light is functional, but I'm not going to be flicking up and down a light when there's somebody who's watching TV in the room. That's, invasive to them. So, cool. Next thing I wanted to do was get rid of the box that was in the kitchen because that was making me crazy. I told her like, "Hey, I would have to special order it because it's nowhere near us, but everything is going to be on me. Everything in this video was on me." I was like, "Don't worry about it. I just want to see this place look a little better." So she was grateful, and I said, knob and tube is not something that's easy, so I have to prepare for the worst. I have to prepare for all of these connections to snap and everything to just go wrong. Luckily, I was about 50% correct. That being said, the first thing I wanted to do was get that old cap off. She was kind of sentimental, saying like, my old switch and my cover plate and everything's been there for so long. I'm like, that's cool, but it's going to look a lot better and be a lot more functional long term. So she agreed. I pulled the cap off. First thing I did, you could see all that dust and debris. I just wanted to get my blower and my shop vac in there, get rid of all of that dust and debris, and get my non-contact tester, see what's live and what's not, because I can't trust any wires if I didn't install them myself. Know what's what, because I have been shocked because somebody had 2 different circuit breaker circuits, not here, in a different apartment. And what they did was they had 2 hots coming from 2 different circuits, but they were using the same neutral from one of the circuits. And so I didn't know that there was current returning on the other voltage and current running through the neutral. So when I was changing a light fixture on one, I touched the neutral by accident, of course, dummy me, and it was, I got shocked. So you have to be very careful. It wasn't as powerful as 120 volts and burn me, but things do happen and you do have to be careful. And especially, I was up on a ladder that was made of aluminum, so you don't want to do that. That's an absolute no no. Going to use my Klein ET310 and get that circuit found so I can kill all power going to this box, and also confirm that there's no other connections in here from a different circuit before we go pulling any plugs or any contacts, any screws, anything that's conductive. Now, she was going back and forth with me about, like, well, can you leave the cover and just change the switches, or leave the switches and just change the cover? And I was like, I understand that you want like sentimental value and stuff, but it's just going to look weird if I put new parts with old parts or old parts with new parts. She insisted. So I said, how about I see which of the switches seems to be in the best condition, and I'll leave one. She said, okay. So I know that the main light for her kitchen is going to be on and off through the years. So I said, let me change that one. I used a preferred switch, which is technically residential grade. So it's one step above residential, but one step below commercial. If you're trying to save a little money, you can use it. Otherwise, always install commercial grade or spec grade. If you're um, if you have the option, always go for the higher grade stuff. It's going to last much longer and be much more robust. If you have people that are heavy handed with the flicking, if they flick them hard and you're using cheap switches, they're not going to last as long. Obviously, whoever installed this did cut a 4-gang box. They only needed 3, but this does allow them to add another circuit in the future. So if they wanted to add like an under the cabinet light, or they wanted to wire in a garbage disposal, they could absolutely do that. So it's about giving options to the person you're working for, so that they understand your ability to be able to kind of work around their situations. Now, what you're seeing here is a Leviton toggle plate. And what that is essentially a placeholder for a toggle or for a light switch. When you put those in, it sits flush against the cover plate. And so it makes for a nice, good seal in the meantime until you add another circuit. And that makes so that all that dust and debris doesn't just get sucked in through the wall and end up, constantly building over the screws and over the terminals, which could allow for a spark or an arc to create a fire. If you have a whole bunch of dust and debris, especially with old knob and tube cloth, it is literally kindling for a fire. With non-compliant drywall or plaster around, you're asking for your house to burn down, so be careful. And also, please do not draw your screws all the way in on one side. You do have to shift them, and sometimes walls are not exactly even. So take your time. Remember, some of these things can be plastic. You do not want to break them. So with the new outlet in, new switch in, new toggle plate in, and that original switch, I did give a little bit of a cleaning to it, like a disinfectant wipe, just to kind of clean it up, make it look a little brighter. Um, it was still bugging me, but I'm not gonna argue with anybody. That new cover plate coming in super clean. The original plate was only held in with a little bit of plaster in the corner and a little paint and one screw. So this one's going to be much happier and held in with the actual 7 screws the way it should be. And of course, I went back with my multimeter and did check. If anybody happens to work for a probe company, please, Fluke, Probe Master, somebody send me something, because my leads were kind of toast. So I did get my 120, but if anybody's got some leads they could send me, or leads they can recommend me, yeah, mine's are kind of done for. And I don't like the OEM ones that Klein sells at Home Depot. Feel like I want to step up in quality, at least for now. And I did tell her, like, hey, if I'm going to be installing switches that are identical, like white switches, I'd rather have the labels put on. And so when I was, at home, I was like, let me just print these labels out and bring them to her, see what she thinks. My P Touch Cube is what I use as a label maker. It's, super versatile, different color tapes, different color text. They print right on the spot with a free app. There's no membership, nothing like that. I'm not sponsored, nothing like that. I just, it's my label maker. You press the little scissor button, it clips out, and you got a nice, cute, happy little label. So, hey. And they're small adhesives, so if you ever want to pick them off and just peel them and toss them, you could always do that. Might also be handy if you're labeling a panel, if you don't want to write with like permanent marker, because, people do change circuits all the time. Something to keep in mind. And after everything was put back on, she's like, hey, can you switch that for the new light switch? Because it kind of looks, it would look better with a new switch. I said, I told you. But when I was changing that one, the knob and tube old copper snapped. And so I had to wago in some 14 gauge solid to make that connection. So it'll work. And again, I'm still getting the same voltage. I did test all the lights. Everything is safe. So, no harm, no foul. While I was there, I also changed a couple of outlets that were in the living room and their cover plates. And that's all the mess I made for that particular encounter. So, yeah, try to recycle and do that stuff. But that is it for the video. Got my halo in the background. And I hope this was entertaining. Apologies that I couldn't really show everything, but people talking, and it's somebody's apartment. I'm not going to be rude or anything like that. Again, it is a video that's going on YouTube. It's not a YouTube video. Please respect people's homes and don't walk in with a camera, setting up a DSLR with the Media Mod GoPro. And no, this is just trying to get work done. It just so happens that I'm sharing it with you. Sound good? All right. Well, that's all I have. So have a good one. Good luck to you. Hope you had a great day and work smart.